Happy Wednesday, everybody. Got an exciting episode here for you. We are talking about week 2 starts and sits. Going to go through all the optimal players. Guys, I'm going to lay it out here via chart. You're going to check it out here. Optimal players to start for NFL week 2 based on matchup, okay? Now, doesn't necessarily mean you got to start them just because they have an optimal matchup. If there's a better player and they've got, one of your starters and they got a tougher matchup, you may want to start them as well, even though the matchup is tough. Remember, it was only 1 week last week, guys. 1 week, so don't get discouraged. There's a lot of guys that didn't do well. Amon-Ra St. Brown, an example. Drake London. All of the Chicago wide receivers. Now, again, I'm not high on those guys, but I'm telling you, those guys are going to have up and down type weeks. So many players did not perform well last week. Mark Andrews, a perfect example. Everybody jumping on the waiver wire to grab Isaiah Likely could likely be a bust this week, right? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to go through these matchups here. Every player, right? All the optimal players here for each position, okay? This is very, very important. I'm going to pull up a chart. It's going to be great. We're going to hang out here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the latest news and notes as well. If you are new to the channel, smash it, tap it, slap it, guys. Hit the thumbs up. Really helps the channel, guys. Smash that thumbs up. Just takes 2 seconds of your time. And drop a comment below or question. Starts and sits questions. I'll try to get to as many as I possibly can. Drop a question below. I want to make this interactive here, okay? And finally, guys, if you've not joined the front lines, join the front lines here. Patreon.com/FFCounselor. The only place for real direct access where I guarantee your questions are answered, depending on which tier you're in. You want to be in the captain package and up. And then I deliver waiver wires, everything there, exclusive videos. Make sure you guys are patreon.com/FFCounselor. All right, let's start off here with some latest news and notes here.
We now have breaking news.
A couple things I want to highlight.
Have breaking news.
Okay, easy there, Breaking Brad. It's been a couple days since we've talked to Breaking Brad. He's excited, so he says it twice. A couple things I want to talk about here. I read this yesterday. I'm a little pissed off about it. Derrick Henry, okay, this is what I just found out here. That basically John Harbaugh said that we didn't bring Henry here to be the guy that gets the ball 30 times a game. He's done that before. That's not really the plan. The plan is Derek Lamar, Mark Andrews, blah, 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 Zay Flowers, Bateman, Aguilar, using them all. That's the plan. So why didn't you tell us this before the season started? Derrick Henry's always been a workhorse. That's his forte. That's what he does, right? So the fact that they're saying he's not going to be a bit of a concern, obviously. Again, last week they were playing from behind. I don't know if it's going to continue. I would imagine they're going to use him more than that, and they're going to use him around the goal line. Still 10 to 15 points, but he's not going to get the 30 touches. He's still going to get work. He's still the main guy. Not really concerned yet until I see kind of how the next 2 games go. But as of right now, a little bit of a concern for sure, okay? I do want to talk about the Christian McCaffrey thing. Missed week 1. And again, they didn't tell you this. And I was telling you guys, this guy back in May, don't draft Christian McCaffrey. No timetable for return. Apparently, it's an Achilles tendonitis. The problem is, at the time of this recording, they haven't told us the grade of this. So depending on the grade, he could be out, a long time. I mean, 4 to 6 weeks, I think was the maximum. I got to go back. I did a story mode on this on my Insta. And I can't remember exactly what the grade was. But depending on the grade, he could be out a while. So I got this here. Mild cases 1 to 2 weeks with proper rest. Now, hopefully that's what it is for CMC owners. Moderate cases 4 to 6 weeks, and severe cases of Achilles tendonitis several months if there's significant damage, such as partial tearing. Healing could take up to 3 to 6 months. Surgery is rare, but may be necessary in chronic cases of tendon tears. So, guys, I mean, I told you this about Christian McCaffrey. What goes up must come down. 2 pinnacle years. He's a bust this year already. I'm telling you. And not to mention, I want to talk about this. Jordan Mason's going to get work now. You just can't perform on a high level like that and be benched right after. So I think Jordan Mason's going to be a thorn in the Christian McCaffrey side, and you're going to see a decline no matter what with Christian McCaffrey this year. Okay, very, very important. Other news and notes here. Anything that's jumping out? Marvin Harrison. I guess the team wants to get him more involved. It's certainly a focus on the forefront. Obviously didn't do anything in week 1. What was he limited to 1 catch on 3 targets? Very sad. Could have had the game-winning touchdown, but Kyler Murray couldn't see his number 1 receiver. I don't know what to tell you, man. Just very, 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 very brutal. I mean, you draft this guy, a top wide receiver prospect, and you don't throw him the ball. absolutely terrible. Okay. Again, Jake Ferguson is optimal, has optimism to play, according to Jerry Jones. He's dealing with a sprained MCL. I would assume, maybe he's going to be off this week, but I'm very glad that Ferguson is healthy and not dealing with a season-ending injury. That's huge because I'm a big Ferguson owner. I believe in him this year. Malik Willis is going to be starting against the Colts. This is going to ripple down impact, obviously, the receivers. I am a little bit suspect in starting Jaden Reed-Dobbs. That being said, there's times where backups have come in and absolutely tore it up with players. I just don't know if that's going to happen with Malik Willis at quarterback, because we saw him come in for that play with the Hail Mary and he absolutely sucked. I mean, maybe it was just one play. Maybe Malik does better than that one play where he tried to throw the Hail Mary and just couldn't get it off. So, that's going to happen as well. And a bunch of smaller news as well. So nothing huge worth mentioning here right now. So that's pretty much the latest news and notes here. Now let's go through, guys. Again, if you're new to the channel, smash it, tap it, slap it. So I'm going to pull up the optimizer here, guys. And I've done the work here for you. We're going to take a look at all the optimal players at each position, starting off with the quarterback position, and then you guys can make executive starts and sits decision. Now, I will be doing a full preview show with Jimmy Maverick. They'll be out tomorrow on all the matchups and spread, and we're going to talk a little bit more of a conversation. This is more of a practical, hands-on, so you guys get a visual view, and I can explain some of these guys as well on who to start at each position, okay? So starting at the quarterback position, you can see here that Jaden Daniels has a great matchup. Again, this is based on last week, so we got 1 week point of reference here to go on. Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence. If you're in the car, I'm still going to rhyme this off for you, so don't worry, you don't need a visual, but if you want to go over to YouTube, at least you get a visual here, okay? Lamar Jackson, great matchup versus position here versus Vegas. Justin Herbert should absolutely light up Carolina. Had a mediocre week last week. I think it was a divisional matchup, 10 points last week, as you can see here. But he's going to be playing Carolina, and they did not look good last week. So Justin Herbert owners, now's your week, Jalen Hurts versus Atlanta, Pat Mahomes versus Cincy, good matchup. Jacoby Brissett, if he's starting, which I believe he is, versus Seattle, and Tua versus Buffalo, decent matchup, and it starts going down from here. Now, again, if it's green here, 23, right, there's 32 teams, it's like the 9th easiest matchup versus position. If it's 31-32, right, then it's basically the easiest matchup, give or take, at each position, okay? This is kind of a point of reference. Just, use it lightly, okay? It's just basically an idea based on last week, okay? Again, as you can see here, if I filter here by tougher matchups on paper, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott versus New Orleans, Bryce Young, tough matchup. And as you know, last week didn't do the greatest. Geno Smith versus New England, Derek Carr versus Dallas, Sam Darnold versus San Fran. Now, again, this is going to be a huge test for Sam Darnold because last week he had an easy matchup. This week is going to be tougher for Sam Darnold. So all these people on the waiver wire picking up Sam Darnold, it's like, okay, let's be cautious here. Let's be aware, what's going to happen. Again, also this factors in kind of their play of last week. So if the quarterback kind of sucked, it's taken under consideration as well. Daniel Jones, 7th hardest matchup versus position, very hard to trust. I wouldn't go ahead and start him. Now, again, Allen here, on paper here, again, based on last week. Again, as we get through the weeks, the algorithm is going to adjust, and we're going to know better who the tough matchups are, right? So it's taking a little bit from last year and this year, but 1 week is very, very hard to gauge, but you have an idea. Josh Allen, 11th hardest matchup versus position versus Miami, but I'm not sitting Josh Allen. I'm going to start him, okay? Burrow versus KC, mid-range matchup. Stroud versus Chicago, mid-range matchup. I know Chicago did well defensively last week, so, you got to see why CJ Stroud's kind of, labeled as a mid-range matchup, and then Kyler Murray mid-range matchup, okay? So, again, this is just an idea, an indicator. The secret here, guys, when you're doing all starts and sits, you want to basically start your starters for the most part, unless you have a starter that's in a better optimal position, if that makes sense. So, if I've got, Josh Allen, and I got Herbert as my backup, like you saw, Allen has the 11th hardest matchup versus position on paper based on 1 week pretty much. And then, Herbert's got a great matchup versus Carolina. I still might start, and I'm still going to start Josh Allen. I'd be tempted to start Herbert based on matchup, and very well so. Herbert lights it up and has a 50-point game. Very possible. Well, not 50, but you get what I mean. I'm over-exaggerating. But you still want to start the guy that you believe in, the guy that's been consistent. I know it's only 1 week, but stick with me, guys. You know what I mean. Josh Allen's been consistent over the years. You know what I mean, okay? So we're going to filter here by running backs here, based on all 16 games. And again, filtered by the easiest matchup versus position. Again, on paper, I'm not going to keep repeating myself, okay? So we've got here Breece Hall. Didn't have the greatest game last week. 6 to 7, or sorry, what do you have? 19 points last week. Again, this is kind of last week and last 3 games. This is factoring last year, but 19 points last week. And then you got to take a look at, easy matchup versus Tennessee. Bijan, sorry, what am I saying? Bijan. Brian Robinson. Oh my God, I thought it was, oh my God, I'm reading it wrong. Brian Robinson, easy matchup versus the Giants. You got to take a look at that. Him and Eckler here. So again, I'm not really an Eckler fan, but I don't believe in him. But if you want to start him and you're desperate at running back, go right ahead. I don't believe in him. Braylon Allen, again, sometimes it factors in and brings in the second and third running back here on paper, but obviously you don't want to start Braylon Allen. You want to start the starter here. And I could probably filter here by depth chart. So that's going to look better. So we don't have all the backups and as many backups in there. So Breece Hall here, good matchup. Brian Robinson, I don't believe in him, but decent matchup. Travis Etienne, again, we talked about him getting more work with Bigsby, and there was pretty much a split last week. So I would assume that they're going to be doing some sort of split timeshare thing there again. So be cautious with Etienne. Again, good matchup there with Cleveland. Derrick Henry, we just talked about it, maybe limited to some degree, but decent matchup here. Gus Edwards, and we talked about J.K. Dobbins getting work. I'm not sure when Kamani Vidal is coming back, but take a look at that situation. But it's still a bit of a committee. Dobbins looks like he led the pack there. As long as he stays healthy, he could be the man. Again, Gus Edwards, only 4 points last week. It was Dobbins' show, okay? Saquon Barkley, obviously a must start here versus Atlanta, but as you can see, very favorable matchup here. Pacheco, great matchup. Stevenson, again, I talked about this in the offseason. Don't have a lot of stock in Stevenson, but, he's in prime position to succeed. Obviously, the offense, a little suspect. Quarterback play, very suspect, but you got to take a look at Stevenson as being a workhorse there potentially, okay? The Mostert, situation there, still say that as a starter, but him and Achane, I think they're dealing with some banged up. They're a little banged up, but they should play. But again, a bit of a committee there. As you can see, Mostert didn't get a lot of points. It's going to be a little questionable there. Let me I think I can bring back Achane here on this chart. In regards to, it's still going to be a bit of a committee, and that's my concern here with these Dolphins running backs, okay? It's going to be a bit of a committee. And as you see, Dobbins here going back 26 points last week, and then Gus didn't get the work, okay? Saquon we talked about, and again, Achane is going to get the work too as well. It's going to be a bit of a committee there in Miami, but all favorable matchups. Bijan, there he is. Good matchup, arguably, top 10 matchup versus position against Philly on paper. As you can see, Bijan was the guy last week. We talked about him being the workhorse. I think that's going to continue. Algier is going to get a lightened workload compared to last year, okay? Let's go with the guys that have tough matchup on paper here, just so you know. Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery actually on paper have a tough matchup versus Tampa Bay's rush defense. Ezekiel Elliott, 13 points last week. He's going to get those goal line carries. And what really pissed me off is a lot of people are saying, oh, Rico Dowdle's the guy, blah, blah. Rico Dowdle sucks, man. Years to wow us, we're not wowed. And as you can see, 4 points last week. It's going to be a bit of a committee, but very annoying. Other tough matchups on paper, Alvin Kamara versus Dallas. Aaron Jones coming off this good week. He's playing San Fran this week. Back to reality, potentially. Just be cautious there. Jonathan Taylor, only 11 points last week. Arguably a tough matchup here against Green Bay. Javonte Williams didn't do much last week. Tough matchup versus Pittsburgh. A couple other guys here. Rachaad White. We talked about Rachaad White, Bucky Irving on the waiver wire. A lot of people picked him up. I talked about stashing Bucky Irving on your roster. Rachaad White looked, decent points, but very lackluster in regards to his yards per carry. So be careful with Rachaad White this year. Again, I feel he's going to be eaten into in regards to volume, okay? Zach Moss, as you can see here, tougher matchup versus position versus KC, and James Cook, 11th hardest matchup versus position, okay? So again, you guys have to make these decisions as I get ready here to do wide receivers here. You guys got to get ready and make the executive decisions. Again, we're going off 1 week, so just because Amon-Ra St. Brown had a bad week, you don't want to sit him, okay? You don't want to sit Amon-Ra St. Brown because he had a bad week. You don't want to sit Drake London. And these coaches are aware, Marvin Harrison, coaches are aware they had a bad week. They're going to start feeding them a little more volume. They have to be more aware of these wide receivers, and then there's the week 1 jitters. So don't be afraid of that, okay? Let's get to wide receivers. Before I do, guys, I am teamed up with mybookie.ag. Right now, guys, they can match your deposit up to 100%. Go to the site right now, 100% match deposit. Use code FFC, guys. Get in the action, get in on the spreads, get in on the games, get in on it. Whatever sport you're watching, this is the place to get in on the action, guys. Football is back. Go create an account. Whatever you put down, up to $1,000. If you put 100 in, they're going to match it 100%. Just make sure you guys use the code FFC. This is the account. This is the place I use that I put my bets on. This is the site I love, mybookie.ag. The code you want to use, guys, is FFC. Head on over there, create an account right now. All right. So let's again get back into this here. Optimal matchups. Let's rip through this here. Optimal matchups here at the wide receiver position. Garrett Wilson, good matchup versus Tennessee. You guys getting the hang of this here, right? The chart here. Other guys here. Terry McLaurin didn't have the good game, but good matchup versus the Giants. This is the week for Terry McLaurin to do something. Years to wow us, we're not wowed. I mean, something's got to happen soon enough, I would think, right? We look at who else is here? Jacksonville receivers. I mean, good matchup here. I don't like Kirk. I'm more of a Brian Thomas Jr. guy. Good matchup versus Cleveland. Ladd McConkey, man. Don't be a donkey. Draft Ladd McConkey. I love him, man. I think he's got a great matchup this week. I'm all in on Mr. McConkey here. 100% great matchup here versus Carolina after what we saw last week. I'm all in. A.J. Brown, obviously a must start, but also a favorable matchup, which just entices the deal a lot more. Rashee Rice, now, again, good matchup here versus Cincy against wide receivers based on paper, based on 1 week. But again, you got Xavier Worthy there who had himself a big game. Is that going to continue? His targets weren't that high. I'm not sold on Xavier Worthy. I think they're going to spread the ball around. When Marquise Brown comes back, look for more target dilution. Look for Travis Kelce to get a little more involved this week as well. Okay, that's so very, very important to note. I think it was a bit of a pinnacle week last week. Okay, Demario Douglas did nothing last week. I mean, him and Polk just didn't do anything. Obviously, suspect offense there, but they do have a good matchup versus Seattle to the Patriots. Tyreek Hill with all his off-field drama, he's got a good matchup versus Buffalo. Decent against the pass there. Set to have a good week. Waddle, same thing as well. Either one of these guys very touchdown bound this week. They're going to get a touchdown. Drake London, if you're wondering about him, he does have a favorable matchup versus Philly. In receptions here, he's got to do something this week. I mean, this is the week for him. And Ridley, decent matchup here as well. Calvin Ridley did nothing last week as well. So those are some favorable matchups. Again, you can go pause it, take a look. I want to note here again, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra. I told you that Jameson Williams would be a bit of a thorn in Amon-Ra's side because we were talking about him a lot in the offseason, saying that he stepped up, he's matured, all that stuff. But Amon-Ra's still the guy. Should you be concerned? I mean, I was more high on, this offense last year. I got Laporta for a deal. It was just a better bargain all around for this team. Now that they've had a good year last year, more people on their radar, it's a bit of a mess that way. You overpaid for some of these guys. So it seems like, it sucks when they have a bad game. So they do have a tougher matchup on paper. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, tougher matchup on paper. Just so you know, the Cowboys versus the Saints here. Just be aware. I don't know if I'd be starting any Leggett or Adam Thielen, Carolina versus the Chargers secondary. It's going to be tough. Justin Jefferson, we talked about it. Tough matchup versus position this week versus San Fran. How are they going to fare up? Sam Darnold versus a real defense. Going to be interesting to watch. DK Metcalf, don't have any stock in him. They do have a tougher matchup versus New England. Who else is here worth mentioning? Tougher matchup here. Again, DJ Moore doesn't get easier. Houston secondary, 7th hardest matchup versus position for these guys. Again, Giants, Bears, and Broncos, all tougher matchups for their wide receivers. So Cortland Sutton, Malik Neighbors could be seeing tougher matchups. We want to see Malik get going. We want to see Daniel Jones get going. We want to see them get going for fantasy football. Now, a lot of people got this Devon Veely guy off waiver. Denver's wide receiver. I think he was drafted 6th, 7th round, something like that. He's been stepping up a little bit, had himself a decent game, 12 points last week. He is playing Pittsburgh. It's going to be a tough matchup, so be aware of that going into this week, okay? Again, if you have any questions, drop them below. I'll get to them. We're going to do tight ends and defenses here as well, so you guys get an idea. And then again, if you're seeing, my player's got a tough matchup, maybe you want to start somebody else. Let's rip through tight ends. Zach Ertz, a good matchup here. Washington, I'd like to see Ben Sinnott get going. He never got going last week. Tyler Conklin, good matchup. Might be a good flex play if you're desperate for a tight end. You might want to take a look at Conklin. Only 2 points last week, not exciting. Evan Ingram looked good in preseason, didn't do anything last week. Jacksonville's tight end, only 2 points, could be a bounce back week for him. Favorable matchup, so need to be aware. Isaiah Likely, great matchup, but is it going to be the Mark Andrews show, or is it going to be Likely? Something to monitor here. Big difference in targets, big difference in points in regards in the favor of Likely last week. Likely not going to happen again, so just be aware of that. Kelsey, favorable matchup versus Cincy, be aware. Pat Freiermuth had a bad game last week, only 7 points. Hopefully he gets involved this week. Good matchup as well versus position. Kyle Pitts, 12 points last week. Good matchup, as you can see, versus position here as well. Again, if I don't mention their name, they've probably got a mid-range matchup. I'm going to the extremes. I'm looking at the toughest matchups and the best matchups. Sam Laporta, average game. We're going to tough matchups here, versus versus Tampa Bay. Tougher matchup on paper. I don't know if I don't think Ferguson's playing, but you could consider Luke Schoonmaker. Tough matchup though. I don't think he's much of a pass catching tight end, but good luck with that. Foster Moreau had a great game last week, 14 points ish, give or take. He is playing Dallas, tougher matchup. He might be back down to reality this week, so be aware of that. Anything else? Theo Johnson might get some work. Again, he was on for a lot of the snap counts. Theo Johnson, tight end for the Giants. But 7th hardest matchup versus position. Consider that. Brock Bowers got a couple passes, 12 points. Tougher matchup versus Baltimore is Brock Bowers here, okay? Luke Musgrove as well, slightly tougher matchup. So, again, take this under consideration, guys, when you are starting and sitting your players, all right? Let's go to defenses here. Now, again, with defenses, you definitely want to start. I always recommend draft a top 10 defense if you don't have one. Like I got Pittsburgh on my team. I'm pretty happy starting them almost every week based on what I saw from Watt on defense. But again, some favorable matchups you may want to consider this week. Jets versus Tennessee. The Commanders versus the Giants, at home could be really, really good. Jacksonville versus Cleveland. Baltimore versus Vegas. Chargers versus Carolina. I know a lot of people are streaming the Chargers defense this week because, again, it is against Carolina, and they didn't look good, okay? Eagles versus Atlanta, Chiefs versus Cincy, Patriots versus Seattle, Steelers versus Denver, and Dolphins versus Buffalo. I don't know if I do that. I think Josh Allen still run over these guys. So be careful with some of these guys. We're kind of more focused this week on the Chargers. I think the Commanders, if you're looking to stream a defense there, could be good, okay? And again, obviously some, tougher matchups. I think, at position, we won't get too much of that. We want to focus mainly on the easier matchups, okay? So, guys, listen, I'm telling you guys, you want to start. It's week 1, right? I mean, week 2 now, but week 1 is, all we're kind of going off of here. Do not get discouraged by your players. Have confidence and conviction in your draft. Take a look at last year. Take a look at, who got the most volume, okay? Maybe it might have been a fluke situation. Maybe Mark Andrews, I'm not a Mark Andrews owner, but if I drafted him in whatever round he was coming off, 3rd, 4th round, I probably wouldn't sit Mark Andrews. I would stick to my guns, stick in my beliefs. If he does it for 3 weeks, I'm like, man, oh man, I got the wrong guy here. So I don't know. I wouldn't give up on your starters. That's all I'm saying, okay? Have conviction, guys, lion mentality, smash it, tap it, slap it, and drop a question below if you have one here. And this will help you guys get ready for the week, all right? Appreciate you guys. Subscribe, thumbs up, and follow on all social media channels. Turn on that bell for news, notes, and everything else. We'll talk soon, guys. I appreciate it. I'm out.